All right, hello. So this is the incident report writing module. So we're just going to kind of run through a quick scenario, some tips and tricks to writing incident reports and things that we expect from you when writing an incident report and inside the Maxion system. So just to get started, I'm just going to show you where the incident report is located and how to get to it. So here in the search bar, go ahead and type in University Housing and Dining Services, like so. And then right here where it says UHDS admin right there, go ahead and click on that. So here on the housing page, over here in the bottom left corner, you'll see above contact us and under employment, there's staff resources. Go ahead and click on that. When you click on that, it'll actually bring up a little login. You'll go ahead and type in your ecom information there and it'll log you right in. And so here you see the UHDS staff resources page. We have facility manual, homecoming guidelines, opening and closing, and report an incident. So we'll go ahead and click on report an incident. Here you would type in your full name. So for this example, I would type in, Bruce Wayne, because that's who I am according to this. My name is actually Christopher Hawk, as you saw, but we're going to use Bruce Wayne as the example. Right here you'd write assistant complex director or resident assistant, your phone number, email address, nature of report. This is really important actually. So you'll see 3 different options here. Don't hit these other 2. Title IX report, you still probably won't hit. You'll probably hit residence life report because you guys are RAs and you guys are in the residence halls. And so that's really important. Go ahead and hit that because if you hit general conduct, it really changes the way that those reports work and where they're going and how those are interacted with on the back end. So you'll put in your date or incident, the time of the incident, and then the location. There's a huge drop-down menu of all sorts of things in the Macomb area, outside the Macomb area. Here's all of the residence halls with residence locations, other campus locations. And then once you select that location, you can also specify that location as well. So you could say like, Buffalo Wild Wings kitchen. I don't know what's happening there, but you could put that. So here you'll put like the name of whoever it is. So like, let's say we have 3 residents. We'll put, Gordon Ramsay. He'll be one of our residents. We'll put, he'll be the alleged because he's smoking. So right here under this select role drop-down menu, you have your alleged, which is kind of the person who is appears to be breaking the policy. You have your victims, like if there was like a fight or something like that, the victim might be the person who's being assaulted. You have your witness, which is kind of the people who aren't necessarily specifically involved in the situation, but they're there to see it. And then you have your student of concern. That would be for somebody who's like really excessively homesick or ill or something like that, where you might put in an incident report for that if we request you to as head staff members. Really important to go ahead and get the student's ID during the situation, get their ID number, write it down so that whenever you go to write the incident report, you put in the ID number here. Super important detail about this. So usually whenever you get a student ID, it kind of shows up in the format of this where you'll have 3 numbers, a dash, 2 numbers, a dash, and then 4 more numbers. That's not how we need you to copy it here. Instead, what we need is we just need all the numbers like so. That way we know, because that way in the Maxion system, it kind of makes it show up as the account that we have the person put under. And so if you put it in with the dashes, what happens is it just makes a whole different profile instead. And then that incident report doesn't get linked to the student that we need it to be linked to. So super important. Go ahead and take the dashes out of there. Then you can go ahead, the date of birth, you probably won't have that information. You may not have their phone number either. If you happen to have their email address, you can go ahead and put it there. And then hall and address. This can be pretty important if you have that information, especially if it's one of the residence rooms. That can really help us locate where it happened a little bit more. Go ahead and include that in the incident report as well down here, and then go ahead and put in the hall address. So, and then after you do that, you can add another, and you can do this all over again. So we could do Arnold Palmer as one of our next ones, and it just continues from there, and you can just continue to add people as need be. So then we have the reason for the report. Right here is where you're actually going to write the incident report itself. So we'll get to that in a second. Right here we have, was the Office of Public Safety involved with this incident? You put yes or no. I'm not sure what circumstances you might put unsure, but that is also an option. Supporting documentation. So if you end up having like a picture of, like, let's say one of your residents covers their smoke detector with a trash bag, you can take a picture of that and you can upload that to this, and that will support that documentation. And whenever we go to adjudicate those fellows, that information will assist us. Whenever you go to submit, you'll hit this "I'm not a robot" little thing you do right here, and then we will submit the report. All right, so here's my example incident report. Just going to run it through real quick and show you some tips and tricks and things that we expect of you guys when you write your incident reports. So the first thing is just kind of time and date. So on Monday, August 29th at 4:15 a.m., it just kind of gives you a specific time of when that is. If you don't know the very specific time, chances are you probably called a head staff member or OPS to deal with this situation. Just kind of go back and look at your phone and see what time it was, or if you're kind of thinking about it in the situation, kind of write down that time just so you have a time to give us, and then we can go from there. And then it says Assistant Complex Director, and then in parentheses it says ACD. It's really important to write out those acronyms so that we know what they mean on the back end. It really helps people who aren't housing folk to see what those things are spelled out, and kind of gives them a better picture. And then it says Bruce Wayne, that's my example, ACD, was sitting in Tanner Hall E-Classroom when ACD Wayne smelled the odor of cannabis coming from the elevator lobby just outside the E-Classroom. So kind of giving a location of where things are happening helps. ACD Wayne walked into the hallway and confronted residents Betty Crocker, Gordon Ramsay, and Arnold Palmer. So what's important about this is that everybody should have a title, so that we know specifically who is what kind of character. So for example, resident Betty Crocker, resident Gordon Ramsay, and so on. And so in this case, because I listed 3 of them, I just said residents, but if I was talking about one of them in specific, so it might say resident Betty Crocker, or it might say resident Gordon Ramsay. And so that's another important detail. Resident Ramsay was holding a joint in his hand. ACD Wayne asked resident Ramsay to set it on the ground. ACD Wayne asked residents Crocker, Ramsay, and Palmer for IDs. So as you can see, like, it continues to say ACD Wayne, ACD Wayne, ACD Wayne. There should be no use of pronouns or anything like that. It should be very specific who is doing what. And it kind of reads disjointed and redundant, but it definitely gives us a really good example or a really good picture of who is doing what in the situation. That's really important because then there's no confusion. Where if I said like, oh, he could mean ACD Wayne or resident Crocker or resident Ramsay. Also, after introducing a character, so you can start with ACD Bruce Wayne, but then you can just go to ACD Wayne. Kind of stick to last names because that tends to be what we use in our system, and so it just kind of keeps things consistent there, right? And so also, as you can see, there's no opinions in this incident report. These are all things that actually happened. These are objective events, things that like you saw, you heard, or like I guess you could have tasted. I don't know what you'd be tasting, so you probably shouldn't do that. But regardless, these are things that you saw with your senses. These are objective fact. So it's not like, oh, I know for sure Betty Crocker and Arnold Palmer were smoking weed or cannabis in this room. It's definitely a lot more objective than that. It's definitely a lot more of a rigid structure to this report than that. And so right here it says ACD Wayne called OPS. And this specific stance, I put Office of Public Safety in parentheses. It still goes ahead and explains it, but the preference would probably still be the other way around, where you say Office of Public Safety first and then put OPS in the parentheses. After you do that, you can start to say OPS, ACD, RA, so on and so forth. So again, putting the times that you called them, while waiting for OPS to arrive, ACD Wayne explained the conduct process. This is important to include. It shows that you're really trying to explain to them, like, hey, after this situation, you'll probably receive an email from a head staff member or from somewhere stating like that they got a report through Maxient and that there's some sort of meeting involved, something of that nature. So make sure during the situation that you can try to remember to give them that information as you move forward. The OPS officer arrived to the scene and escorted residents Ramsay, Crocker, and Palmer to the OPS team office, where the officer administered judicial referrals to residents Ramsay, Crocker, and Palmer. During the conversation, the OPS officer asked residents Crocker, Ramsay, and Palmer who the cannabis belonged to. Residents Crocker, Ramsay, and Palmer all stated that the cannabis was being shared between residents Crocker, Ramsay, and Palmer. So again, it seems really redundant. It's super important though to be very specific with who's doing what and all of that stuff. Residents Crocker, Ramsay, and Palmer were compliant through the entire process. This is also very useful for us who are attempting to adjudicate the situations, whether or not they were being compliant or not. So go ahead and feel free to tell us that information as well. And so if you can as well, if it's an alcohol situation or it's a cannabis situation, do the best that you can to specify the amount that they have. That might change the way that we choose to adjudicate in that meeting and have that conversation with them. And as a last note, I just adjusted this little 2 right here. It's really important to go through and proofread and make sure that all the stuff that you write makes sense. I know sometimes these IRs are being done at 3:30, 4 5 a.m. in the morning. But really do the best you can to be as detailed as possible. These reports really have everything to do with what's going to happen to the student when they move forward. We make a lot of our decisions based off the information that are in these reports in those meetings. And so please make sure you're detailed. Please make sure that you're being objective, and make sure that you're being as precise as possible. And so that's really all the tips and tricks I have for incident report writing. This is the example incident report. And feel free to ask those around you who have done it for further help and support in these. So thank you all for listening, and have a good rest of your training.